This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Yes, we're in Sacramento, the state capital, and we're joined today by Ted Gaines. He is a member of the California State Senate. Sir, I have two daughters, 8th grade and 6th grade.
All right.
And at the end of August, we are buying school supplies feverishly.
Yes.
It's amazing to me how expensive they can be, especially books.
Right.
You know, we're getting into high school, and those
Yes.
textbooks can be very expensive. And you have a plan to try to create some relief for families like mine.
Absolutely.
Tell us about it.
I've got 6 children
Yeah, I
myself.
know you
Now,
do.
A lot of them are grown.
Right, I was
but,
going to say. And he's still in high school or elementary?
I've got a 13-year-old.
Okay, so you're still going on. Yeah.
But there's just a lot of pressure on
Right.
families in California, and we're the heaviest tax state in a number of areas, or among the top 5
Yeah, we'll talk about
nationally.
that for sure.
But we thought, why don't we provide some relief for families so that when they're having to buy school supplies,
Right.
that there would be a weekend that we would dedicate that would be tax-free, so that you could go buy the supplies that you need for your children for school over a designated weekend in August.
Sure, sure.
That would give you an opportunity to buy those supplies and save a little money.
Save a little money indeed. Hard not to like this proposal. I'm a neutral journalist,
Thank
but
you.
come on.
Thank you.
Hard not to like it. But what's interesting is clearly you thought this out, because you have indicated that the sales tax portion that would be exempt would only be the states.
That's right.
Because that's your purview.
That's right.
And so if the locals want to jump on board,
Right.
be our guest.
That's right.
But explain that.
Yeah, so we, that is our purview,
Yeah.
is that just the portion of the sales tax that goes to the state treasury
Right.
is what we have authority over, and then the locals could make their own
Right.
decision in terms of what they wanted to do. But just felt it'd be nice to provide that relief. Again, we're living in an era where we have surpluses of revenue coming into the Treasury.
But let's talk about that, because obviously it would be a hit to the Treasury.
Right.
I'm not sure how much 2 days of school supplies sales or 4 days would hit the Treasury, but do you have a sense, I know it's early on, sir, but
Right.
how much revenue the state coffers would lose, because in the
Right.
end, you're not collecting
Right.
sales tax, should, it's called SB 1210 pass.
Yes, we're thinking in the $75 million range.
Okay.
When you look at a budget of $250 billion,
Yeah, wow.
is
All
not
in.
that
Yeah.
not a whole lot of money,
Yeah.
and yet it's going in the right area for families that are struggling to raise their children
Right.
in a very expensive state.
And I understand Texas has adopted
does
this,
have this.
and I guess the
Yes.
$75 million figure is extrapolated
That's
from
right.
there.
That's right.
But let me ask you though, I've said this before, some folks, including Republicans, have said that Governor Brown is the best Republican governor they've ever seen. And the reason they say that is because on matters of fiscal prudence, he is just that. Prudent.
Right.
He's been very clear that he doesn't want deficits to balloon.
Yes.
And so, for example, last year, there were a series of proposals similar to this in that providing tax relief.
Yes.
I know Adrena Zarian in the Assembly had focused on a seismic retrofit tax credit, and the governor wound up vetoing, I believe, all of them. And his
Yes.
message was, look, I get it, but I'm just not willing, as we're just getting out of this huge hole, to provide tax relief in these types of situations. What's your sense?
Well, we've seen about $16 billion in unanticipated revenue in the last 2 years come into the Treasury, and I just feel that it's time to provide some relief
Right.
for Californians, especially families in this case, that just need a little break, and it's not huge. I know that he's a friend of Arthur Laffer and the Laffer curve,
right.
supply side
Yes,
economics.
yeah, well,
so
we'll see.
I'm hoping that maybe
Right.
he'll take a little different view
Right.
with this economy that continues to bring more revenue into our Treasury, and Californians are still struggling. We've got a struggling middle class
It
here.
is an interesting recovery.
Yes.
Look, things are better. It's hard to deny.
Right.
But look, I got to think parts of your district in North State where the
Yes,
recovery's uneven.
absolutely.
Is that fair?
Absolutely. You go to Siskiyou County, Modoc
Right.
County, some of the more rural parts of my district, they are struggling economically, higher unemployment rates
Right.
than the rest of my district.
Do you feel as if with a year that appears to be a strong one in terms of state revenue that maybe the governor would jump on board this time with some of these tax proposals?
I would love to have that discussion with him.
Give him a call.
Yes, talk to him and kind of take him through how important this is for families that have continued to be under
Right.
pressure economically.
And one could argue, I mean, look, It's a 2-day holiday?
Right.
It's a little short.
We're not asking
not
a whole lot here.
But let me ask you about your friends in the Democratic Party in the state Senate or Assembly. Have you spoken with them about it? Because obviously you would need a bipartisan solution on this.
Well, my staff is working on making sure we're communicating to other offices. I'll be talking to legislators as we move forward. We still haven't had our first committee hearing yet.
Okay, so it's early.
Yes, we will be doing that.
I want to talk a little more broadly about the tax environment in California. You wrote, I thought it was a great, was it an op-ed? Was it an op-ed? I'm not sure where it was published, but
a couple of local papers.
Yeah, it was very catchy. And you talked about how the losing quarterback of the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl was held in California, he was just here for that day, suffered some serious tax consequences as a result. I mentioned to you, I had worked in Colorado for 11 months and 2 weeks 1 year, and in California for 2 weeks. And the tax consequences were troubling, even though I was only in California for 2 weeks. And so, give me a sense.
Well, our tax code is really messed up. It needs reform, but the Cam Newton example, I think the bonus was $51,000, and he paid, I think, $87,000 or something in taxes. There's something wrong with that picture, and why aren't we taking a look at the tax code as a whole and providing relief?
So let's talk about that. My guess is, I could be wrong, that new state senator Bob Hertzberg and you have become friends. I could be wrong, but you're kind of kindred spirits, great energy. He's all about tax reform.
Yes, he is.
He's all about tax reform.
Yes,
and so he's a Democrat.
I would love to work with Senator Hertzberg. I've had conversations with him. But mine is more on providing relief in the form of tax cuts.
I understand.
And how do we reform the tax code so it's simple, but also provides relief, and you can do it in such a way that over time, with the right type of tax cuts, you can produce more revenue. And we saw that with the Reagan Revolution. Over 7 years, tax revenues doubled as a result of tax cuts.
Well, what do you think then of Senator Hertzberg's plan, which would look to lower sales tax, but spread out on what sales tax is applicable?
Well, I have real challenges because he says that that's tax neutral, right?
I think he doesn't.
Well,
I think he's saying it actually is tax positive, that more revenue would come in.
All right.
So am I right?
Often the argument is neutrality in taxes, and I would still argue that someone else's ox is being gored.
I understand.
Right?
I understand.
When you take a look at it, he's looking at taxing services. I'm not
and that's
convinced we need to tax services. I mean, aren't we taxed enough already in the state of California?
But I guess his argument is we're dropping sales tax overall. It's a tricky dynamic, and the service economy. I do want to ask you though about Carl's Jr. I don't know if you heard. Carl's Jr. left California.
That's right.
Yeah, and they've gone to Tennessee.
A number of companies.
Yeah,
That's one of many.
Yes. It's unfortunate.
Yes.
Tesla is here mostly, but they did they're building a big plant in
I worked
Nevada.
on trying to keep that gigafactory
I remember.
here.
I know, because it was somewhat in your, I think in your district or near your district. So, wow. I mean, I don't know much, but I understand our corporate tax rate, although high, is not amongst the worst. But our regulatory environment is challenging, to say the least.
Absolutely.
So where do we go with this in trying to keep corporations either here or convince them to come here?
Well, I think you could do it on several fronts, but number one, you look at regulatory reform, and there's sensible ways of doing that with still protecting the public and protecting the environment. I've got a great example in British Columbia where they went through and got rid of the duplication of regulation. They looked at the conflict of regulation from one agency to another. Then they instituted a rule that for every regulation that's implemented, you have to eliminate one. And by the time they were done with that 2 years of just counting the regulations, they cut out 160,000 regs.
Well, let's talk to our friends in B.C.
There
His name is Ted Gaines. He is a member of the California State Senate. I'm in Sacramento. I'm Brad Pomerance, and this is Local Edition.